Get started on time. We have a jam-packed day today. Do I even need a mic? I just talk like this. Yeah. You don't hear me? Yeah, you don't need a mic. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming. This is way more than than show up. So thank you so much for coming. We have a jam-packed day. We'll probably run about 10 minutes late. So thank you for running late with us. We're going to record this meeting so you can watch it later. We're starting a new YouTube channel. Yeah, so we can keep all our emergency meetings on there. And if you want to go back and reference them, thank you, Mark, for putting this together. Few slightly off-topic items real quick. We're a few upcoming events. We're all kind of nerds about our neighborhood. We have Mitchell Schwartzer. He wrote Helltown. Have you guys read that book? It's about the history of Oakland. He's coming just to us on March 8th. You should see some emails come out, as well as there is a flyer back there with the upcoming events. With that, we have Town Hall on Saturday, April 12th, and then our garage sale on the 26th. So just a few things coming up. Like I said, you'll receive emails. We got a flyer in the back. We all want to be safe with Park Ridge Estates, and so a huge component of that is intervention group. We really all need your help. We've been here for over 10 years, have been super loyal to us. So please be loyal back. Everyone who contributes helps take care of the neighborhood. So contributing only helps. All right. You take care of your next door neighbor, then in turn taking care of yourself. And lastly, and something that we're new we're doing is it takes time, it takes effort, it takes fun to put together these events. And so if you can make a contribution, $5, something small, really helps go a long way. So we have some jars in the back. We also have QR codes to Venmo, Zelle, PayPal, however you want to contribute, fine with me, but please help contribute to help pay for things that we do here. All right. We'll also put up the QR codes on TV afterwards. That's about it. So let's get started. Here's our agenda for the quick. We got Nick Luby, who's going to talk about fire. Frank Dauby, who's going to talk about Firewise. Susan Silverman is going to talk about GoBag. Chris Brown will talk about first aid. And then if there's time left over, which I think there will be, we'll make some time. You're going to hear from me and talk about homeowners insurance. All right. Nick, you're up.
All right, what do we do?
Here's your, I had.
Oh, you got a lot of.
Connect with us. Yeah. Here's our agenda. All right, here you go.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Does anyone not know me? My wife says I get more respect here than I do at work. They asked me to come back and talk about the LA fires. Obviously, I got little bits of information from that. As you all saw, probably the fire chief got fired yesterday. And that is typical for, happens a lot with large scale incidents. I sent that email out during the fires. I have yet to see a large scale incident that there's not finger pointing and everyone's saying it's somebody else's fault. And it's the mayor's fault, and it's the fire chief's fault, and it's the firefighter's fault, and it's the police department's fault. The reality that we're here today is we can't blame everybody else when a disaster happens. We have to take care of ourselves and be prepared for ourselves. Emergency services are there for everyday occurrences. Emergency services just get overwhelmed during disasters. You gotta accept that. You can't look at Katrina. Everyone pointed their fingers at FEMA. Emergency services and water supplies are for everyday use. Everyone will do, your government will do the best it can when systems, when things are at its worst. But, we don't staff, fire departments don't staff, police departments don't staff for large scale disasters. The budget would be, you think we have budget problems now? Try to have 500 firefighters on duty every day for that disaster that happens once every 40 years. So just something to consider, because I know that happens a lot and everyone's like, oh, the fire department didn't show up. It's overwhelmed very quickly if you have multiple incidents or large scale incidents. So anyway, I'm gonna try to stay positive, but I am the doom and gloom guy, and then it'll transition into positive people that will tell you about everything. But I'm gonna set the stage and scenario for you. And basically, I don't beat around the bush. I just want people to know reality and what to truly expect, because I do think that there is an underlying thought process of government or municipalities will be there during our worst day. Municipalities will be there during your worst day. Again, things get overwhelmed. So, we're gonna talk about LA fires. I'll talk quickly about water supply. I know that came up in the neighborhood. Talk about how this could happen here. I'm gonna transition into zone 0. Does everyone know what zone 0 is? Yeah, who knows about zone 0? Raise your hand. Yep, that's what I kind of figured. I didn't know about zone 0 until recently. You're all gonna know about zone 0. And you're gonna hear a lot more about zone 0 coming forward. And just talk about planning and plan now. So we'll go ahead, maybe. Uh-oh, too far. How about I do that? Do a touch?
You want me to
Click on that link.
the video?
I'm gonna start by a quick video. And the video is basically one of the best videos I found that kind of goes over the initial hour of the Palisades fire. We'll start from the beginning. So just sit there, think about us, think about our location, our geographic location, and put yourselves in the situation that happened in LA. And I'll cover the first hour. And this is reality. And this is what I talk about. Plans are in place, training's done, drills are done, but when the match hits the ignition point, everything has a tendency to just kind of implode.
Palisades fire was devastating. 12 deaths of more than 5,400 homes lost. Within that disaster was an exodus so disorganized, survivors wondered how they escaped. Where the Santa Monica Mountains and the Pacific Ocean converge, the stepped bluffs above the Pacific Palisades on January 7th are inviting. Bright sun, spectacular views, and a bracing wind. Char from the New Year's Day brush fire 5 days before testifies to the danger on these ridges. There's been no rain for 8 months. The entire LA basin is on fire watch. It's beneath the ridge. The housing developments that make up the Palisades go toward the ocean. 12,000 people in the highlands and the neighboring subdivisions. Just 3 roads out. The fire watch camera
3 roads out.
within a mile away is aimed for the scar of the previous fire, and at that very same spot, smoke. The Santa Ana wind is a bellows, and in just 2 minutes, columns of smoke rise above roofs. A few residents notice and call 911. The evacuation has begun.
Building your online business?
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm cheap. Don't pay for the
And sell your store.
Yes,
Yeah.
you get mine. There's a little profanity coming up. I apologize if you're offended.
This is not LA's first fire of the morning. The Palisades are distant from most resources, and the closest city fire engine is 20 minutes out. Fire crews know it will be ugly by the time they get there.
20 minutes until the first engine goes up.
30 to 40 mile an hour wind.
Expected need doubles with every minute. Residents of the Palisades are grasping a nightmare. Most will be on their own to get out.
My God, Dave, it's so bad. We gotta go. Let's pack our stuff.
City fire helicopters are first to arrive. From the air, a fire supervisor assesses the shrinking window before homes are hit. City police units are also en route, but instead of being sent straight to the fray to help alert residents, they're diverted to a command post. An LAPD sergeant from West LA is already on the ridge at the fire's edge. Jeremy Weinberg is still in his kitchen with his partner, trying to come up with a plan.
My heart rate was 165. Do you need a water? You want to take one car too? They haven't told us to leave yet.
Not until 47 minutes into the incident does the Los Angeles Emergency Management Division send its first alert. The push notice buzzes every cell phone in the Palisades and those who've signed up for robocalls.
Those near the Palisades fire should get set for a potential evacuation.
The area under threat is so large, 25 square miles, even with 100 LAPD officers and 350 city and county firefighters on scene that morning. Many Palisades residents will say they saw no one on the street, felt left alone to make crucial decisions, and received evacuation orders after the fact. Right now, for Weinberg, partner, and pets, it's time to go. They leave the network of home security cameras running. Those will capture what ensues. While among fire bosses, disagreement is brewing.
On the Palisades incident, you have a wind-driven brush fire, approximately 30 acres at this point. We do have structures threatened. We have put out a WE alert for a shout to notify the area. We are not evacuating residents at this time. We're in the process of putting that piece together.
Early evacuees like Jeremy Weinberg already are driving out through flames, but the fire department's incident commanders, IC on the radio, begin to send conflicting and confusing orders about a full-scale evacuation.
Palisades IC Command 1 to issue an evac warning for that area, for all those Palisades areas. IC copies the evac warning for the whole area. Ready to issue that evacuation notice now. For me, you want an order and not a warning, correct? An order, if you feedback warning, feedback order.
The decision tree for an evacuation goes like this. Incident commanders request the order. It's relayed by the fire's dispatch center, Metro, and then issued by the City Emergency Operations Center. In this fire, after 1 hour, that hasn't happened. Now, homes are burning.
Yeah, I really need to get up here at home there. We're evacuation or all the
She runs down the Pacific Coast Highway in trouble.
You've got gridlock on Palisades Drive. People are driving down both sides. You have spotting on the other side of Palisades. I recommend getting something going to Sunset all the way to the Getty Villa. Start thinking about you with the wind that we're experiencing up here, and I'm looking across canyons. That's where it looks like it's headed. Metro from Palisades, I think we need to evacuation.
Metro seeks confirmation.
I think you want the cell phone. Roger.
Still,
What's the time?
there is no.
We're over an hour into this. We're still trying to figure out evacuations.
Really see flames. Once I left my house and went down the canyon, there was not much traffic. The roads are open.
As tied up, he sees how quickly the fire is advancing on his neighborhood at the summit. He decides to leave, and he thinks Palisades Drive is clear. But at the bottom of the canyon,
You can look up on the hillside on the left, and there's flames kind of at the top, and they're just slowly.
That looks like Keller
down.
Avenue.
And that's when you see all these cars stopped, and it's a massive traffic jam. There was embers flying over the cars.
Duffy thinks he'll be safer at home and turns around. For the Palisades, fire is a repeating history from 1938 to the Black Monday firestorm across LA in 1978. Again, roads were blocked, homes burned, Budget cuts and the fire chief were blamed. Leaders called for a building moratorium. Expansion prevailed. Development after development has been stacked on the ridge, reliant on only 3 routes out, all empty onto a snaking commercial street connecting to the Pacific Coast Highway. And within the first hour of this fire, they're all gridlocked. For residents in Marquez Knolls, there's Bienvenida Avenue and Lockman Lane. Those in the Highlands rely on a long drive through narrow Santa Ynez Canyon on Palisades Drive.
Yeah, we need to talk to PD and get all this traffic on Palisades Drive free flowed out to PD. On both sides of Palisades Drive, we need to get these part of that here.
Disaster software from Old Dominion University calculates that the time needed to evacuate this area is 5 hours under blue sky conditions.
Blue skies,
The roads fire-free.
no fire, blue
And
skies.
half of them converted to one-way flow. This isn't just about the need for people to escape. First responders need to get in.
All companies at the bottom of Palisades Drive are unable to traffic fleet people, all 4 lanes.
Amid the road havoc, there's an evacuation order, not for the Palisades, and nor by the city. Los Angeles County issuing its own alerts to the surrounding areas since the first plume of smoke now tells those along the Pacific Coast Highway and the already impassable evacuation routes to join the exits.
The homeowners are saying they're unable to access any exit routes. There's fire on both sides of the roads on Palisades that you need to think about with evac, if they need to go north or how we're gonna shelter in place in this bowl.
Others also turn back. They'll gamble that the traffic clears before the ridge burns.
Walked in the house, I'm like, guys, like, you can't even evacuate if you want to.
Except now, that is exactly what LA's Metropolitan Fire Communications Division calls for. 12:07 p.m., 1 hour and 42 minutes into the incident, the city orders residents of Pacific Palisades to leave. Going the other way is David Hansen. His elderly mother is among those on the ridge, trapped by blocked roads. For an hour, Hansen winds his way up side streets to reach a little-used gated emergency road. A fire engine blocks the way. Hansen pleads and he gets an escort. This undeveloped spur is called Fire Road.
And the fire road is literally on fire.
He reaches his mother, but there's no return. The slopes are ablaze, and the fire road itself is now impassable, even to firefighters. Hansen and Duffy join others stuck in the Highlands. Privately, the city fire department has also told a senior living center at the top of the bluff to shelter in place. Those on the outer
Yeah, one of those,
perimeter
don't
use
we?
water from their swimming pools to buy time.
1254 Dorado with a fire hose and pump connected to the pool. Helping the neighborhood out. They're awesome.
Down canyon, fire is moving at a fast clip. Conditions below are so bad, a private security service tells residents on the ridge to shelter in place. A block off Sunset Boulevard, Jeff and Sherry Grant, their children and their pets flee the family's newly remodeled home, still adorned with a giant Christmas bow. The family caravan of 4 cars gets barely a quarter mile before being flanked by fire.
Requesting units responders off Sunset and Palisades to evacuate people in vehicle burning.
Have them get out of the car and go in quick.
The Grant family caravan and many others stuck on Sunset around them are told to get out and run. They leave their cars behind. Others can't even get this far.
Wow, there's no place to go.
Hey, it's a quick update, be advised, Sunset Boulevard, half full due to approximately 100 abandoned vehicles in the road.
And about there, we were coming. This opposite direction, just cars, everybody's trying to get out, but a lot of people ditch their cars because we have this over here. This was all lighting up pretty good.
The solution to this problem is unconventional.
1360 Alpha from operations for those vehicles, what do you need to get them moved? What resources do we need? We need, heavy equipment to move a lot of vehicles.
None of the fire engines can get to the fire.
The fire hides beneath thick smoke. It takes a plane with heat sensors to show what those on the ground know, that the fire cuts evacuation routes. It is closing in on neighborhoods from 2 sides, where some residents have made a fatal mistake to stay behind. After the leading edge of the fire crosses over, firefighters use the break to escort convoys down the canyon where abandoned cars still burn. Hanson and his mother are among them.
Wow.
Cars that were trying to get out every which lane, everywhere. Both sides of the 4-lane road, in and out. You see a car caught total fire.
Food for work has to work. That's why there's Easy Cater, with easy online ordering from a huge variety of restaurants, all from one platform. Plus 24/7 live support from
Alright, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
You're about to hear the fire chief come on and talk, but she doesn't have a job anymore. It was yesterday. Maybe I'll apply. No, I'm not applying. So that, I guess that's reality. Again, I hate to be the doom and gloom guy. We all saw it when they had the Keller fire. We hit gridlock and fire wasn't even near us. So that's reality. And we gotta work, take reality, we gotta work with reality, and we gotta come up with our own plans, whether it's with your family, with the community, with our neighborhood, of how to work. I always go back and forth. Do you wait till you wait till you're told to go, or do you go as soon as you hear that there's a potential incident? I used to be one of the persons like, oh, if everyone just leaves because they panic, it creates gridlock. I've always said, oh, wait till you're told to go. Kind of changed my thought process on that. If something's happening and it's a potential, it's probably better. I mean, they'll say now it's better to go and don't wait to be told. Because apparently it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if we wait until Genesis Protect notifies you, or if you don't, we're gonna have traffic situations, and that's the reality. That one road, Palisade, the Parkway, it looks like Keller Avenue to me. I mean, with the canyons coming down there.
Much longer though.
But much longer. But I guarantee you Keller Avenue will be gridlocked. It doesn't matter. But it is a longer drive. Let me run through it and we'll do questions at the end. So, LA fires, 100-mile-an-hour winds. That's where the winds topped out that night. Aircraft got grounded. They can't fly in 100-mile-an-hour winds. If there's no aircraft, we're completely, fire service is done. We rely heavily on aircraft. We saw that on the Keller fire. Once the aircraft came in, that thing was shut down. But until then, we got to wait for aircraft. Aircraft was shut down. They were flying during the day. That night, they couldn't do any flying operations. It's 100-mile-an-hour winds. This is not a wildfire. This is a firestorm. This is a hurricane. This is a tornado. This is what we in the West Coast get. We don't get hurricanes. We don't get tornadoes. We get wildfire firestorms, and we can't stop it. There's no stopping it. All the fire department is doing is life preservation, trying to get as many people out of the way or sheltered out of the front of the fire, because there's no way to stop it. There's no way Chief Crowley was going to stop that fire, even if she had 3,000 firefighters there. It doesn't work with the spotting. We'll talk quickly about ember casts and all that stuff. But this thing's jumping a mile ahead of it. I'll guarantee you that incident commanders there had even no idea really the size of this incident, because it was happening so fast and growing so quickly. It's really hard to wrap your head around where the actual front of the fire is. So they call them wildfires. Yes, they start in vegetation. They find a receptive fuel bed, whether it's off of Redwood Road or down in Bort Meadow, where it starts. But once it gets into structures and there's wind going, it's a structure to structure fire. We're no longer into a wildland fire. This house is on fire, and now it's catching the house behind it on fire because we only have 10-foot, 5-foot easements between our houses. Dustin's house is on fire, catching your neighbor's house on fire.
Thanks.
Yeah. So the key point there is, and you guys, we'll get into it more, and I think the conversation today will go on to it. What you do to prepare your house isn't just about your house, it's about your neighbor's house, and it's about the neighborhood. And I think there will be a conversation about Firewise communities and everything. And when a whole community comes together and protects their homes and hardens their homes, it makes the community more resilient, because these are structure to structure fires. Pre-positioning, I talked about that last time. They had a massive pre-positioning contingency move down to Southern California. They were covering, I think, 7 counties. And what pre-positioning is, there's money in the state budget to order resources, fire resources ahead of a wind event. And they will mobilize additional firefighters, additional engines, additional water tenders, all that stuff. And try to have the ability to throw resources at it quicker instead of waiting for the reflex time of stuff from Northern California to get to Southern California. I mean, we sent a lot of stuff from Northern California to Southern California, but it did not get there till the next morning. Pretty much 16 hours after the fire started, when stuff from Northern California started making it down there. A lot of damage had been done then. So a lot of pre-PO, I can't remember the numbers, I want to say 300 firefighters, I don't remember. I mean, there was a lot of equipment that had been pre-brought down there by CAL FIRE, by state OES. Again, 100-mile-an-hour winds, there's nothing that's gonna stop it. Reservoirs and water supplies. Just like I talked about in the beginning, fire departments, police departments, everything is designed for everyday, maybe a little bit of a surge, but everyday operations. Nothing, including water supply systems, are not designed for situations like this. Again, billions of dollars if you needed to do that. And the money is not, money's not there. On the Keller fire, they were pulling so much water and that was a little fire. I mean, I know it was big to us, but it's a little fire in this grand scheme of wildfires. They ended up collapsing the water main because they were pulling so much water. For that little fire, and the water, I don't know if you guys saw, the car ended up in a sinkhole there because they were having such a demand on it. So no water systems designed. I don't know, I haven't heard any of the reports about the empty reservoir. That's a whole nother conversation. Had nothing to do with water having to be released from reservoirs in Northern California to go to Southern California. That played no part in this. But we had the same situation happen here in the 91 fire. The water system failed here. Hydrants are dry. Here we are, 91, 40 years later, something like that, 30 years later. Same things happen, pop up again. It's the reality of, again, system being overwhelmed, whether it's first responders or water systems. We do have workarounds for that. And I'll cover it in the next slide real quickly, but that is a big possibility for us that we will not have it. Our water system here in East Bay Mud is built on a zone system, starting down low, pumps up to the next zone, pumps up to the next zone, pumps up to the next zone. We have a water tank up by Skyline High School. We got a water tank up off of Skyline up towards Roberts. All those have to get fed. Our failures in 91 were based on electricity. They didn't have the backup power systems in place. So when the power went out, fire department's draining the reservoirs. People are using garden hoses. People are turning their sprinkler system on. They're draining the reservoirs. There was no backup power to keep the pumps moving to replenish the water. That has been addressed, they tell me. Hopefully we'll all test it. Can this happen here? Yes. Guess what? It did happen here in 1991. Who was here? Yes. Not here, but here. We were there. There, you were there. So the issue we have is let's try this. Who did not live in Oakland in 1991? Raise your hand. It's definitely the minority here. Well, what's happening is more and more people are leaving or no longer around, and people are forgetting about 91 and that it did happen here. And complacency is our worst enemy. Complacency is the gravity and disaster preparedness. And when you haven't lived through a disaster, it's hard to fathom and grasp it. So that is an uphill battle for emergency management. That's an uphill battle for everyone that felt the impact of the 91 fires to try to get the new generation that's moving in to realize like this is going to happen. Don't feel like you're immune from it. So we all know it can happen here. And that's what today and these meetings are about, is to prepare.
Back home?
To a lot of technology here, so far. Okay, there we go. Is to do everything we can to make sure we are doing what we can to make sure that we survive. Real quick on water systems, I know it came up after the fires. tools we have on the fire service, well, I'll just go straight to East Bay Mud. They have generators that supply the pumping plants to fill the reservoirs. Some are permanent, some have to be put in place. The ones that have to be put in place are deployed when there's a potential for public safety power shutdowns by PG&E, which usually means it correlates, as they talked about last meeting, there are going to be winds, and the winds are going to mean that there's a potential for a fire that quickly grows. So they kind of all ties together. You know, some people will say, well, why aren't they always there? It's a cost thing, I think, to permanently install some of these generators. But if there's any inkling that we will be in a high fire danger or red flag, they deploy any generators that need to be deployed so that the power is there, is what they tell me. Some fire engines carry these little Honda pumps where we can pump out of any water source, including a pool. And then we will pump and fill the fire engine's engine. So if you have a pool, don't be surprised if you start taking your water. Right, you can put a claim in with the city and see if we'll give you the water back, but probably not. Water tenders. There's numerous water tenders in this county. Oakland has 2 water tenders. They range from about 1,500 gallons to 3,000 to 4,000 gallons. This is the one from Alameda. Couldn't find any of Oakland's water tenders online, but this is Alameda's at the Keller Fire. All that water's coming off of this tank here. And this is behind that church, can't remember what street that is, but you know, church right by the freeway. Around town, we can actually do a scavenger hunt. Around town, you'll see a white hydrant and a red hydrant next to each other. Has anyone ever seen a white hydrant and a red hydrant next to each other? Okay, when you drive down Keller, right as you come down Keller, off to the side there on your right-hand side, there's a East Bay Mud facility. There's one there. Also, when you drive down Redwood Road, as you come to Crestmont, at the traffic light there, you'll see a red, well, you'll see 2 hydrants. I can't remember, one's painted red. It's supposed to be painted red. Those are called zone-to-zone hydrants. Those came in after the 91 fire, is my understanding. Basically, what that allows us to do is put a fire engine there. So if the pumps are not pumping or keeping up, we put a fire engine there. We basically are pulling water from the bottom zone, and now we're pumping it into the top zone. So we basically are the pump if the pumps fail. So there's, I think, 14 or 15 locations around the city that have it. This is the one, there's one in front of Round Table Pizza at Woodminster. That's the other option. And East Bay Mud has portable pumps too. And they will basically put these pumps in, and then we basically can circumvent or band-aid any failures in the pumping system. And then finally, so water tenders also carry these snap tanks. They will fill them. And then I had mentioned in an email after the fire that every fire engine in Oakland and in the county has the ability to draft 1,500 gallons per minute. Basically, we stick this hard suction hose into a water source. We have to be able to get to the water source. So it needs to be about 20 feet away from the fire engine. And we can suck water out and then pump it to wherever we need to go. So there's workarounds. I just want, you know, everyone's like, oh, this water system fails. There is ways that we can work around. Not ideal. We prefer fire hydrants. So that is the LA fires. That's all I'll talk about on the LA fires. Zone 0. This is fun. This is good stuff. This is going to be interesting. I'll tell you that much. Zone 0. So Assembly Bill 3074. And you guys might have heard of some of this, but 3074 introduced Zone 0 as a 5-foot ember resistant zone that needs to be around your structure, your houses, if you live in a high fire severity zone or a very high fire severity zone. FYI, you live in a very high fire severity zone. You're wondering if this is going to impact you. So AB 374 passed. It needs it adopted by state fire marshal. It will require this 5-foot ember resistant zone around all structures. When does it take effect? Came law on January 1st, 2021. However, it's not yet being enforced. Governor Newsom, after the LA fires, signed an executive order basically telling the state fire marshal's office and another entity, basically, you guys need to hurry up and get this thing enacted, and it needs to start being enforced statewide. So prior to that executive order, and I don't know if any of this has changed, prior to that executive order, Enforcement on new construction was anticipated for 2025. And full enforcement for existing structures for 2026. So as of before the executive order, 2026, this was coming to a neighborhood or home close to you. Like your own home. Oakland has not done any advertising about it yet. I can tell you Berkeley is full speed ahead. They went to city council with this last week, and they are trying to adopt it ahead of these dates. They're trying to enact it ASAP. And it's, and everyone that lives in the Berkeley Hills will have to start being compliant with Zone 0. Gonna be interesting. Yeah, if you didn't know, we are so lucky. So this is Bay Area, right? 9 Bay Area counties. We are so lucky. We are one of the very few little areas that get to call ourselves a very high fire severity hazard zone. We are, what are we here? We're like right here, right now. So, that's our neighborhood right there. I will say nothing's gonna change for us. I will say this week they're supposed to be putting out new maps for these designated zones in the state. Our maps are supposed to come out this week. I'm willing to bet a lot of money that we will maintain our status in this area. I will say those maps were supposed to come out in January, and all of a sudden that got postponed after the LA fires. So I think the cartographers and GIS people had to run back and run some more analysis. So Zone 0. So, you know, we've always had, we do the vegetation, you know, inspections, and the fire department comes around. It's always been, you know, they got all those criteria, the limbs and the nothing on the roof, and the gutter's clear, no dead and dying vegetation, and you're supposed to have 30 feet of defensible space around your home. Well, everything's now been called Zone 0, Zone 1, Zone 2. Zone 0 will be this 5-foot perimeter around your house. Zone 1 will be that 30-foot that we've known so well for so many years that we're supposed to do. Obviously, it's a little, we don't have 30 feet for most of our homes there, but if we did have some land, that would be the area. And now there's a Zone 3, which is a 30 to 100 foot. So this is the new adopted industry best practices and actually regulations that will come our way. So how do you create a Zone 0? Clear all your dead weeds, grass, and debris around your house. This is going to be the clincher, and I am not the expert on Zone 0. I'm learning it as with everyone else. But pretty much, you cannot have anything combustible within 5 feet of your structure. See you.
If I just put a little flame, it won't go like this, but during a fire.
You are, the way Zone 0 reads to me, and the way I've studied other places, you cannot have combustible materials within 5 feet of your house. If you have a 5-foot easement, if there's a shed right there, shed gotta go. Can't be there. If you have grass that comes up to the back of your house, grass is considered, even if green, in the regulation, they consider that combustible because there's no guarantee that you will continue to water it and it can become brown.
Okay.
You can't have grass up to within 5 feet of your house.
So there's no non-flammable shed?
I don't know that.
Well, what about galvanized steel? Is that was?
Yeah, you could argue, maybe. I would say non-combustible. If it's non-combustible, sure. If it's non-combustible.
How about a deck?
So a deck is the way, so this is evolving, and there is the Institute for Business and Home Safety Standards and Class Certification is a standard that seems to be one that's kind of evolving as the adopted version. The way they look at a deck is if you have a deck, from the edge of the deck, you have to have a 5 feet from the edge of that deck that is non-combustible. You cannot have any debris or storage underneath your deck. The recommendation is that you screen in the bottom of that deck with ember resistant screening, so embers cannot get underneath it. On top of the deck, you're not supposed to have lawn furniture, chairs, tables, anything combustible within 5 feet of your house, per the regulations. So it's daunting. I'll be honest with you. I've walked around my house and I've been like, whoo. It's gonna be quite a project. Here, it gets better. Well, it's not all you get, folks. Where's my, did I not put the, there. Replace combustible fencing and gates with fire resistant materials. You cannot have in the regulation a wooden gate. Do you have a wooden gate? Yeah. No, doesn't.
I do, yeah.
Yeah. So from your fence, which is most likely further 5 feet from your structure, that connecting piece that goes from the fence to the house, which most of us usually have a gate, can no longer be made out of combustible material. I'm thinking about taking up welding and getting a side job of making metal gates. I'm thinking there is so much retirement opportunities coming out of this stuff. I'm gonna be an inspector for an insurance company. I'm all fired up, but it is. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, when I didn't even understand. I had heard Zone Zero for the last year or so. I really hadn't dived into it until Berkeley kind of took off and started trying to adopt this. And then I started researching it, and some of our neighbors have already started to field Zone Zero because their insurance companies are sending them letters saying, you better be Zone Zero compliant or you're losing your insurance. And in order to keep your insurance, they now have companies that the insurance companies have contracted with that will come inspect your house to make sure that you're meeting Zone Zero requirements in order to keep your insurance. I don't, has anyone hit that yet? I know you have, I know one on our street's gotten that. They had to take down their beautiful pergola and their wisteria that had been growing for years is all gone. All had to come down in order to keep their insurance.
Well, is the state gonna provide funding for us to help us do this?
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. I don't know. The Nick Luby, the resident, I would have said a few weeks ago, maybe there would have been some funding. After January, I don't think there's any funding coming anywhere to the state for any support. Federal funding, if you're looking for, federal, and we rely on federal funding to.
No, because this is the state law.
Yeah, well, the state they're losing a lot of other fundings, so I don't think there's gonna be a lot of extra funding around. That's my just gut feeling. I mean, that's just the consensus in government now, is if you're in California, let me just tell you, in the city of Alameda, we spent all last week looking at all our federal funding grants, and we're making contingency plans to lose each and every one of them. And we're budgeting in anticipation of losing all our federal funding, so. Yeah, that's above my pay grade. Call your constituent, yes, the congressman or your state assembly members, and you can bring that up with them. I know of nothing, that's coming down. I think, Frank may talk about, there is some grants, that are out there for Firewise communities and stuff like that, but it's not a lot of the cash, so. And I can't tell you how Oakland's gonna adopt it, how rigorous they're gonna enforce it, but it does get to the conversation. Are you doing it because you're required to do it? Or are you doing it because you want your house to survive and you want your community to be safer? And that's where it's gonna get. Yes, it's gonna cost money. I'm more concerned of what the neighborhood's gonna look like. I mean, it's gonna start looking like a community in Phoenix, like with rock gardens in front and all that vegetation up against those windows, gotta come off. Got to be rock or pavers, or we're looking at decomposed granite around the outside of our house. So that's another, if anyone's a landscape architect, you're gonna score. So that is Zone Zero. Go home, read about it, learn about it, study it. Don't get up. I mean, I first I was like, this is really bad, and then I realized it's not. The state's actually really. I think the insurance companies are heading this way anyway. So I think we're basically going to be riding the tails of what your insurance companies are going to tell you. Everyone heard that State Farm got told no way to raise rates. I think everyone realizes most likely what that means.
Quick question.
Yes.
And this is about the eaves.
Yes.
We all have the open eaves, which are the ember catchers.
Ember
Is that-
catchers. I like that. Ember catchers. Zone Zero, from what I've read, does not include eaves, but if you go to Insurance Institute Business Home Safety Standard certifications, which is what a lot of insurance companies are now starting to adopt in order to keep your insurance, from my reading, eaves need to be done to meet that certification, so you can get your certificate.
We have to close it all. Right now, we catch all the eaves.
Yeah.
So they have to actually install.
So basically you have to put basically stucco on your, you know,
Hardy board.
or hardy board, but it has to be ventilated. You still have to put vents in that so that your attic can vent. But something non-combustible. I mean, hardy board. Yeah, hardy board will work. Most of the houses are stucco, but yeah.
You put it on top of his, 4x4s that are coming out? You put it
2x6s. I would contact your, way I do it is it goes basically from that 2x6, it would come all the way to the stucco, and then, so nothing can get there. And the point being, you know, if you look over on the side here, well, he's a bad example. On my house, my fence is 5 feet from the side of my house, and my eaves come down on the side of my house. Not everyone's like that, but just in my situation, so that fence can stay wooden, according to the zone 0, but that fence will probably catch on fire. And if that fence catches on fire, those flames are gonna hit my eaves. Even though there's 5 feet, that's gonna hit the eaves, it'll get the eaves going, and then I'm coming to your house asking if I can sleep on your couch. Yes. I don't know. I haven't read anything about that. I haven't read anything about it. I think we just, today's awareness that this exists and that this is a assembly bill and this has been passed and the governor has signed an executive order saying the state needs to, fire marshal needs to hurry up and adopt it. Most of these ordinances, when they are at the state level, then need to be adopted at the city level. So the city will have to adopt it into the fire code, but you don't have a choice. Let's just say that city can say, we're not doing it. Once the state says you have to adopt it, then every city has to take it to council and they have to adopt the amendments to the fire code. Yes.
Quick question, top of fences, do you know of anything that would prevent them from burning? Because that's where the embers might alight.
Hey, there's spray. I mean, I've seen sprays, fire resistive stuff you can spray. I know when we were burning up buildings under construction in Oakland, there was a company that had the stuff you could spray when it was all framed up, but not, you know, enclosed, that where stuff exists. Don't know if it actually
changes to your home. We know that during wildfires, embers tend to collect near the base of a home's exterior walls and will ignite anything there that burns. This is the first place you should look to determine how vulnerable your home is. Do you have wood siding that extends within 6 inches of the ground? Do you have bark, mulch, plants, or a buildup of leaves in this area? Even some homes that look fire hardened might be vulnerable here. Is the wood sheeting beneath your home's stucco walls exposed, leaving an opening where flames and embers can ignite the home from inside the walls? Protect this vulnerable area near the base of your exterior walls. We recommend removing anything that can catch fire or burn, especially wood chips, bark, mulch, fallen leaves and needles, and even most plants. If you're a gardener, you know that mulch plays an important role in your landscape. Mulches hold moisture in the ground, and when used correctly, can provide nutrients to keep your plants healthy. A good thing from a fire perspective. Unfortunately, wood or bark mulch in zone 0 can be one of your home's biggest vulnerabilities. Despite the positive attributes, many common mulches are combustible, a major drawback when your home is located in a wildfire-prone area. Within 5 feet of any part of your home, you should choose inorganic mulches like gravel or stone instead of wood or bark. Hardscape pathways of decomposed granite, cobblestone pavers, or concrete are great choices too. These materials offer superior ember resistance and can stop a creeping fire from reaching your home. Even if you've chosen rock or gravel, you still need to clean this area regularly. Any windblown leaf litter or debris that collects in zone 0 is vulnerable to igniting from embers. Protecting zone 0 also means moving any common items you might have stored there, like wood piles, firewood, lumber, or even patio furniture in garbage and recycling cans. Never store anything combustible under decks or porches or overhangs. We know it's a convenient place to store or hide materials, but this is a recipe for disaster. Keep these areas spotlessly clean year-round. Consider screening or enclosing the underside of decks to protect from embers and help you resist the temptation to store things there. When outdoor furniture and decorations are placed near a structure or on a deck, porch, or patio, there's a risk that they'll act as kindling and ignite your home during a wildfire. Wood or plastic patio furniture, natural fiber doormats, shades, screens, umbrellas, and curtains can all ignite easily from embers. Evidence exists that many otherwise ignition-resistant homes have burned because of the homeowner's choice of accessories. Choose outdoor accessories made from non-combustible or ignition-resistant material. A heavy rubber doormat or a decorative metal grate is a better choice than a natural fiber doormat. Cast aluminum furniture is better than wicker or hardwood. Take advantage of time at home and nice weather to get out in the yard today and focus on removing dead plant material, starting in zone 0 closest to the home. Remove dead shrubs and trees, fallen leaves and needles, dry grass and weeds, fallen twigs and branches. Pay closest attention to zone 0, but remember that winds can quickly blow debris back towards your house if you don't keep your entire yard clean. When creating your home's defensible space, zone 0 is ground zero, the most important place and the place you should start. But don't ignore the other zones. Your next steps will focus on zone 1 from 5 to 30 feet and zone 2 up to.
All right, I'll wrap up. Zone 0 is coming to a neighborhood near you soon. We'll leave it at that. All right, I'm getting the, I feel the hook coming.
Yes.
All right, finally, I'll just wrap it up. Prepare to lose your home. Preparations are our biggest thing we can do to prepare, do everything we can not to lose your home, but we do a really bad job of educating our communities. Be prepared if it happens, because guess what? It happens a lot in California, and we're not immune to it. And everyone says every time it happens, I never thought it would be us. It's going to happen to us. I don't know when, but it's going to happen to us. So hope for the best, but prepare for the first. That's my famous quote from Nick Luby. I'll sign my book later. Best preparation, home hardening, defensible space, documenting and archiving documents and photos. Do it now. Don't do it when the fire starts, because you're not going to have time. Be prepared to evacuate without notice. There'll be a conversation about that coming up. Once a year, walk through and around your house, videotape it with your phone, open your cabinets, walk through, talk on your videotape. Oh, there's grandma, ancient grandma's china that's 300 years old in that cabinet. Narrate the walkthrough. When you lose your house, you are going to have to get a long sheet of paper from your insurance company and write each single thing on that claim that you're hoping to get reimbursed for. A lot of help if you have it on a video and you've narrated it. Upload photos, important documents. We had talked about this last time. I'm not going to get into conversation about what's secure, what's not secure. You guys can do that on your own. But deeds, trusts, credit card information. A lot of us have online stuff, so it's not a big deal. You can go online to find old, credit card numbers and stuff like that. Bank information, social security number. Make sure cards. Make sure you can access that. If you are passports and all that stuff, birth certificates, anything and everything. Yes, you can get it. It's just going to take you a lot more time if you don't have a copy of it somewhere. You're going to talk about insurance coverage if I stop talking, but call your insurance companies. Make sure you have adequate insurance. How construction prices have skyrocketed. I just had up my insurance. They basically said I could rebuild half my house unless I did something. So I said, well, I'd rather have a whole house instead of half a house. And do not forget to include alternative housing. You'll probably be living in a rental somewhere for probably at least 2 years until you can get your house rebuilt on a good situation. Reality. One spark. We too could experience the devastating fire. Climate change is real. These happen more and more often. Conversation shouldn't be in our homes should not be if we could lose our homes. They should be about, I wonder when we will lose our homes. Sorry. I know that sounds pretty bad, but that's the thought process. Oh, what if we lose our home? What are we going to do? Not if we will, but someday it will probably happen. To sacrifice of living in such a beautiful community with such beautiful and wonderful people as our neighbors, but we live in a very high fire severity threat zone. It's designated by the state. It's designated by the feds. We have chosen to live in a dangerous place. But we love it, right? And it's an accepted risk that we take. But this is where we live. So we just have to embrace it and hug that we live in a dangerous place. Well, you know what I'm saying. You have two options. We can move and get out of this high fire severity zone, or we can prepare for what will most likely happen someday, maybe next year, maybe 75 years, maybe 100 years from now. We don't know. But what the point is, we can prepare, and preparing means everything from hardening your home to what you're going to do if you don't have a home. I'm not going to do questions because I know that could go on for about an hour and a half. I do want to remind everyone that they now have a new warning for red flags. They're called PDSs. So it's red flag on steroids. That started with NOAA, I think last year. So do not drop your guard when they say it's a red flag without a PDS. And that's my biggest concern. Everyone's like, oh, there's no PDS coming with this one. It's still dangerous. The Weather Service still gets stuff wrong. On the flip side, if they do say it's a red flag, oh, and we're adding a PDS category to it, well, that's not good. That's not, I mean, that means they are pretty darn sure we're going to be getting wind blasted during a red flag event. So don't drop your guard on just your old normal red flag, but definitely raise your height of awareness and your preparation, and maybe relocate if you have access and functional needs, or you know people that have access and functional needs. PDSs, I can tell you right now, Berkeley is actually going to issue relocation notices throughout the Berkeley Hills when a PDS is issued. They don't expect them to happen there every once to 3 to 4 years, one time every 3 to 4 years currently, but do not ignore a PDS. Done.
Right. We got, I'm so sorry. Do you want to email?
You want to question Dustin, and then him and I will get a beer and we'll work on it.
We'll put something together.
I'm
So
sorry.
sorry, we have so much good information. We'll have more of these meetings, so the question will eventually get answered as well. Thank you so much. Frank, you're up.
Hey, good morning, everybody. So hopefully, you picked up a flyer. They're on the desk over there. It's about Firewise USA. So that's what I'm here to talk about. Unlike Nick, I am not a fire professional. I am an engineer by training, and kind of apply that to whatever I'm working on. So I have done a fair amount of research in the last few months, and just wanted to communicate where we stand right now about Firewise. Who here has ever heard of Firewise? Good, looks like a somewhat majority, but not everybody for sure. So basically, Firewise is a national program. It's underneath the National Fire Protection Association. In Oakland, the Firewise program is administered through the Oakland Fire Safe Council. And they have a lot of great information on their website. We have links to that, I believe, on our website, right, Dustin?
Yes, we are totally adding to things, yes.
Yeah. So I think I was going to talk about why we need to do this, but I think it's pretty obvious, and Nick's done a great job of educating us about what's happened lately and where we're at. And as he indicated, our homes and our fire resistance are really dependent upon not only what we do individually, but what we do collectively. So the whole idea behind Firewise is that you work together within your community to improve your fire resilience and prepare for potential wildfires. So as it talked about in the handout, I'll go over the basic steps. So one is forming a committee. So right now we have a committee of 4 of us. Everybody's here: Eric, Susan, Stephanie, myself. We're looking for 1 or 2 more members from the neighborhood to join like a core committee, but everybody's going to need to be involved as time goes on. We basically you conduct an assessment of the properties. We're looking at doing like a survey, etc. And we'll engage fire professionals, possibly those in the neighborhood, possibly Oakland Fire Department, et cetera, to help in that regard. We come up with a 3-year program that basically advances our community's fire hardiness, I guess you call it. Then we basically complete an application through the Firewise program. And when that gets approved, then we move on to implementation. Doesn't mean you can't start tomorrow or today on doing a lot of things that are covered in the Zero program. It's in the Oakland Fire Site Council handouts, et cetera. There's a lot of great information. We'll go ahead and get going on that. So when you implement this, basically the minimum requirements is like 1 hour per person per year. We'll probably be spending a lot more than that, especially if we've got to meet the new requirements from the state fire marshal to get there. And we basically keep track of where we're at. So what are we spending our time and money on? And then we document that and we keep track of it and we give an update. And then once a year, we communicate that to everybody and to the Oakland Fire City Council. And then we update the plan approximately every 3 years. So what's our next steps? Well, we've got a meeting with some of the Oakland Fire Safe people who are doing some training in early March. We'll follow back with the whole community, not just in live, but via the email system, handouts, et cetera, to communicate where we're at and get community-wide engagement. So talk to your neighbors about it, et cetera. Like I said, we'd like to have a couple more members. We'll have at least one community-wide meeting. We'll do the surveys and questionnaires, and that'll be both hard copy and digitally, et cetera. Any questions? I can answer this point.
What's the benefit of Firewise to the community now?
Well, the benefit is that we basically collectively are hardening our neighborhood so that it's more defensible and so it's less likely to catch fire in a wildfire. Obviously, it depends on the individual conditions. Nick's the expert in terms of fire, but
It also opens up small grants, doesn't it?
there are. My wife and I attended the most recent Oakland Fire State Council a few days ago, and there are some grants that are available for larger type projects.
And also, it may be recognized by some insurance carriers and it may give you a 1 or 2% discount on your rate possible. But a promise for all carriers, but some insurance carriers may be pleased that your community has been Firewise designated to help you keep coverage.
It helps us act in a coordinated manner and identify where the highest risks are for the overall neighborhood. Like I said, it's a shared risk amongst us. So you may be doing a great job with yours, but your neighborhood, like your immediate neighbor or other people on your street are way behind and their houses all catch on fire, then.
Yeah, no matter what you did to your house.
Exactly.
Their house is gonna cost you the name. It kind of reminds me of this whole IG thing, where half the people don't pay and the other half do. But it's even worse because if half the people, I mean, it'd be a miracle to get half of the 250 houses here.
Well, we'll see if it's a mandated, if they can't get insurance or if it's mandated by the Oakland Fire Department, I think it's gonna be 100% compliant. But I like to look at it from a positive standpoint that we want to try to engage people and try to get them involved and use the sort of peer pressure, I guess.
Well, I'm happy to volunteer for this community.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Hey, Frank. We go over we, it's not an I thing, it's a we thing, so it's all bad as a we.
So how are you gonna collect names?
So yeah, I have the names for the board and then we're gonna have everybody else help.
Just reach out to us and we'll make sure your fish gets half too, people need to get half too, so. Tuesdays, go bags.
Okay.
Frank, take your saving us 3 minutes. Got some flyers, take one, pass it around.
Okay, real quick. Just one quick.
Yep, different one, go back.
We have two issues. One is we will be able to put our stuff, we all have warning, and we'll be able to put our stuff in our car and get out on Skyway. But there's really good chance we won't have that. This is a lighter pack that you can carry. This one is mine, Mark has one. It's about 10 pounds, that's about all I can carry. I whittled down the list to fit my needs and Mark's needs. You'll do the same thing, but you need something you can carry. If we're gonna walk from here down across Skyline to Bacon, which is our escape, our walking escape route. And we'll have a map about that.
I don't have the map up, but we got maps in the back. And so,
Okay, great.
at our next emergency preparedness meeting, we will do a day out and go for a little hike. So, yeah.
So this is go bag number one. For me, here's my, my lacy underwear. These are things that you don't want a whole new wardrobe. You want something you can survive with for the next couple of days because you are going to be messed up emotionally and physically. And that reminds me, do not forget water. This is, don't, what's the word I want? Don't underuse water. Make sure you do this over everything else. But this is heavy, water's heavy. This pack is 10 pounds already with just these 3 bottles. So this is the list that I developed. Do you have it up, Dave?
The list is not up, but we just passed around the way.
So there's a list of this stuff, which includes water, your meds if you need them, something else important, I can't remember. The 3 some kind of battery system and recharging system, right? Every 6 months, but we do it with a time change. You go in, you replace the water, you replace your batteries, and you charge up your chargers, replace your meds. And that's all you have to do. Once you do this, one thing you can forget about, you're done, except for those things every 6 months. The other bag 2, is much heavier. It's going to be canned food and much more water. Well, not in the bag. We have 2 7-gallon sort of military style water carriers. We used to have 10-gallon. I can't carry those anymore. 7-gallon I can manage. So you can put them in your car. We have 2 of those. 2 of those. A bag with more stuff that's listed on page 2 for going in your car if you're able to get in your car and you want to get in the car way before you get the knock on the door. We don't want to be part of the problem at Skyline. The other thing about that is you need both bags if you're going by car. Don't think just take the big car bag. You definitely need this one. This is part of the whole system. This is just if you have to walk. That's it. Any questions? Yes.
I get the notion of food and water for, earthquakes when we're gonna likely have the shelter in place. But when we're evacuating to an evacuation center,
You may not be.
they always have food and water.
First of all, we don't know if there's gonna be a center available, depends on where it is, they have trouble even the last fire, figuring out where the center goes. Where existing after the development, goes down to the back of Merritt College, which has a fence, we have the code for the we have cutters to get through. But that at least gets us into an open space away from the disaster. The other scenario, which is the stay in place scenario, really isn't part of our experience. That would be a situation where we shouldn't leave for whatever reason. We need to stay and use the water in our water tanks and, the usual kind of stuff. That just doesn't seem to be.
Well, the shelter in place would be an earthquake when we can't get past the freeway.
Right, that's true.
Yeah.
Very true. But even in that case, a lot of our homes could be affected, our gas could be affected. We may not want to be there. We may want to be down behind Merritt College because at least that's an open space. And, at least that's something better than what otherwise would happen. Yes. I have a question about the code. Yeah.
If somebody, I mean, we're not gonna all get the code.
Yeah, we have codes, the codes, for the gates. Yeah, we'll have to talk about how to.
Yeah, so, all the leaders have the codes. We don't disseminate it because we don't want to give out to everybody and it keeps going. But if there's an emergency, we'll disseminate the codes. We're also gonna equip all the leaders with bolt cutters, so worst comes to worst, we just cut. I've got bolt cutters in my bag right now. But that's a kind of ongoing process to make sure the neighborhood is kind of equipped for these. Yeah, exactly, right? We have the code, we got the special code.
And that reminds me, Bacon Road is our escape route, but that's a road where people live. We do not want cars on Bacon Road. Do not get in your car and try to drive down Bacon Road. We'll be risking their lives. This is just for walking.
What about evacuating the other way? How come it's just one way?
There's no, I walked all the way up and down Skyway. The only way out down that way that's reasonably walking distance, I mean, that's already, I don't know, 1.5 miles from here, I think.
I'm talking about the other way on Skyline, to go to Grass Valley Road or Keller.
There are no walking streets that go all the way down that are not on private property.
Oh, then I have another question. When this, we have to evacuate the last time I had what do you do?
It's an excellent question. We have all kinds of people in our neighborhood who are going to be affected by not being able to walk. By the way, instead of using this, you can just as easily use a wheel, a suitcase, a wagon, anything on wheels. But there are lots of people who can't even do that, and that's something we as a neighborhood need to address. Who is not going to be able to walk out of the neighborhood for whatever reason? That's important. We haven't addressed it yet. We need people to come in on this with all your questions and worries. Email them directly because this is how we're going to be safe.
It's a tough thing to address, not saying we shouldn't, but we have to collect everyone's information, say, hey, who are the people who are gonna need help? And then kind of get people to be, I won't say assigned, but like knowing who's responsible for what. And so I can't do this myself, Stephanie can't do this herself, we need your collective help. So we build a program so we can identify when people need help, so we can knock on their doors when something like this happens. All right, so over this year is kind of our project to ask for more help, but we also see people just raising their hands. Okay. But it's a great point, and it's certainly something we need to think about.
Yeah, and then the other question.
I'm so sorry. Go ahead. Last question. Okay. Yeah. Good.
But, oh no, this evacuation route has all those trees on it. Those are all going to probably be burning.
Well, this is assuming we're on fire here. And you're going to be walking down, hopefully out of the burning area, you're crossing Skyline and you're going down. And yeah, there are trees in that neighborhood. But then you're going to the back of Merritt College and all that playing field.
This is kind of an alternative evacuation route, right? If other areas are blocked, here's another way out, right? It's not like, hey, this is the only way out, right? We have other ways out, but people don't think of this way as a way out. So we want to just let you know, here's another way out. So
yeah, this is a Skyline block.
Yeah.
And it's going to be blocked. Yeah. You definitely want to leave before that gets blocked.
Before it's full.
Right.
And if you see your neighbor is getting evacuated, your neighborhood over there is getting evacuated, don't wait for us to get a knock on the door. Get in the car and get out while you can. That's better than waiting.
We're going to move on. We're running about 15 minutes late. Thank you so much, everyone's patience. Chris, you're up. Thank you, Susan.
Yeah. Morning. So I'm the last one. There are two parts to this. Oakland CERT is now up and working just fantastically. And so we're in a stage now where Parkridge Estates and other communities can begin getting certified as CERT trained. And that means not only do you get the nifty hat
and CERT, but you go through a fairly long formal education that we have that you can give, that prepares us for preparedness. There's a lot of different dimensions of it. And Oakland has had a program before that was called CORE. It was around for a long time. Some of the people who've been here for a while may know people or may themselves have gone through the CORE program. That sort of faded out over time. One of the reasons was lack of funding and lack of materials. It was highly intensively labor driven to get that course going. And so we've joined the National CERT program that's sponsored by FEMA. And those of us who train it are now FEMA trained, and we are able to give the CERT program. So what you'll hear more about more and more is as we start recruiting people to do these classes. These classes are going to be 16, 20 people. We used to do CORE in people's living rooms, and you could have 6 people. With the CERT program, because it's such a huge thing, we are going to be getting groups of 20 or so people, maybe more, to do the CERT program, and you'll be hearing about that. One of the great things that comes with the CERT program is fantastic materials, and this is an example of the materials. There's more than this slide. There's a lot of great materials that we'll be sharing with you. This is from Unit 3 of CERT. Today we're going to be talking about Stop the Bleed. So okay, we'll get there. Yes, please. Yeah. Let's keep going. All right. So, controlling bleeding. And there's a lot of this tiny, and so I'll paraphrase it for you, but in general, this is the largest loss of life risk that people have in the community is bleeding out. And so we can see here that there are different stages of bleeding. If you were in the course, we'd be going over these stages in a lot of detail about how much blood you can lose. 15% of your volume, which isn't much, by the way. We only have a few quarts of blood in our body. So 15% of us, or 15% of the blood, easily done if you hit an artery. We talked in the training a little bit further on about the details of arteries versus veins. And we'll talk about how you stop the bleed. When you come out at the end of today, after just a few minutes, you'll have an idea about what you can do to identify the kind of bleeding that you're facing here and something you can do about it that will save someone's life. Be assured, if someone is bleeding and you stop the bleeding, you will save their life. There is no doubt. So stage 2, 15 to 30% of your blood, you start to have, your body starts to compensate. It knows that there's something seriously wrong. When you get to stage 3, 40%, you start to get irreversible changes to your organs, and you're not going to come out of it. You're not going to come out of it well. And if you lose over 40% of your blood volume, you enter irreversible shock. You just pass out. There's nothing that can be done. So it's essential that's, a gallon of blood. It's essential that we learn to stop the bleed early on so that we don't reach that point. How can you get hurt that badly? Well, it turns out a broken arm, if you trip and fall, break an arm, cut an artery, then you've started this process where you can lose that much blood. So this is not some esoteric thing that happens. This is something that happens where what seemingly is a small event cascades and becomes a much larger event. So it's important that we all understand how to respond to these. Photos. Let's go to the other one. Can we bring the other one? Where do you get another one? there's something called Stop the Bleeding, it's a national thing, it has better pictures. And so we're gonna go to that instead of going to the start here. Thank you. Subtle branding here. Are we having? Okay. Good. So we just talked about number one cause of preventable death. Happens everywhere. Anywhere. You could be in a car accident, you could be attacked in some kind of physical thing, you could be at school, you could be at home, you could be at work, anywhere is an opportunity to have an injury that would cause life-threatening bleeding. So the two parts to this, the first one is you identify that there's life-threatening bleeding going on. And then you take steps. This is really too tasteful. Then you take steps to stop the bleeding. There are 3 ways that you can stop the bleeding. Pressure. This is the one everyone knows about from their first aid class. Packing. Less common, pretty yucky, but you'll know when you need to use it. We'll talk about what that looks like. And tourniquets, which people have, a lot of us have been told all our lives, tourniquets, no tourniquets, wrong. Tourniquets save lives. We'll talk about some of the really quick details about tourniquets. We won't go into a lot of detail. Your safety is paramount. Remember, bloodborne pathogens are still a thing. And so it's by that we mean things that will make you sick if you get near or covered with blood. Covered with blood, being near is fine. So make sure that you have isolated maybe some gloves, something over your clothing so you don't become saturated with blood if you're helping with somebody. It's essential though that you take care of your own safety. In addition, if there's something going on around you that maybe caused the injury that has the bleeding, you're helping somebody else. If you are still in danger, if there's still dangling limbs over you, if there's cars whizzing by on the freeway, figure out some way to mitigate that danger before you start working on the bleeding. Do not start working on stopping the bleeding while you are in danger, because that opens you up actually to an incomplete attempt to stop the bleeding. It may actually exacerbate the bleeding, because then you say you sort of slowed it down. Now we got to get you out of here. Oh, we've opened it up again. And the structures that started to be built in your body to control the bleeding now get ripped apart because we moved you. And it's not going to work as well. So it's important that you get the person who's bleeding to a position where you can work on the bleeding uninterrupted. You're not going to be able to interrupt the efforts to stop the bleeding, to move the person, and then restart it. We talk about wear gloves if you can. Clean yourself if you can. Don't try and stop the bleeding with greasy hands if you're working on cars and a part falls on you. But if you have to, you have to. And then if you do get blood in some open cut or something on yourself, you're going to be tested. And so go tell your doctor, go to an urgent care or a hospital and explain what happened and get tested. First, if you can, if you're looking at an event where you're having to save somebody because of bleeding, call 911, because they have people who are professionally trained naturally, and they're going to show up as soon as they can. But in the meantime, it takes maybe 5 minutes to bleed out, maybe even as low as 3 minutes to get to the point where you have irreversible damage. And so that you have to take action right away if you're going to save a life. So calling 911 is great. But then you have to turn your attention to identifying the bleeding and controlling it. Knowing your location is key. This is an amazing thing. This is what they teach you in police and fire. One of the first things they tell you is you must constantly know your location. And so it's important to constantly know your location. I am hard pressed. I cannot even name the address where I'm standing right now. Most of us do not know where we are. So if I was to say, drop dead right now, not drop dead, pass out right now, and one of you had to call for help and we couldn't use the geolocation on your phone, who here could name this address? who would be able, okay, you.
I'm dead, so.
So who would be among the living here? You can name this address. Most of us can't. And so it's important that you make a habit of knowing your location wherever you are. Bleeding. This is fake bleeding, by the way. Find the source of the bleeding. So there are a couple things that amount to bleeding. First of all, we do something in an emergency. We tell you to do a pat down of yourself to look for blood. Because when your adrenaline is going and you're in some kind of an emergency, you can be quite injured and not realize it. And so you look for visual evidence. You wipe everywhere. You look at your hand and see if there's any blood on it. You do the same thing with any victim of bleeding. You wipe around and note the areas where your hand comes back without blood, and you find the bleeding. The bleeding, you're looking for continuous bleeding, and there's two kinds of continuous bleeding. We're looking for a large volume of bleeding, so we're not looking for little cuts. We're looking for something that will drain you. And finally, we're looking for a pooling of blood. Now, there may be multiple places. You're going to have to prioritize. So if someone has a small bleed that's going on maybe on an arm or something, but they have an abdominal bleed that is pooling blood, and it's just, you're seeing this little well of blood getting bigger and bigger, you're going to forget about the arm. The arm is small potatoes. You want to go for the bigger source of bleeding. Also remember, the clothing can hide bleeding, so you're going to have to push slightly, lightly on people to see if there's blood somewhere. And it'll soak through the clothing and go, right here, it's underneath the clothing. At that point, you've discovered hidden bleeding. It's essential that when you examine and look for blood, that you be thorough and you look from all the places in the clothing it could be. So, sources of bleeding. Extremities for sure. Arms and legs, these are the things that get us in trouble. Neck, armpits, and groin. These are pressure points. And of course, the abdominal bleeding. Now, compressive pressure. Apply direct pressure to the wound. You don't want to get a massive wad of clothing, because then all you're doing is compressing the wad of clothing. You're not bringing pressure onto the wound. So you want just enough material that you're going to use to put pressure on the wound to control the blood that is coming out. So you don't want a blood-filled area. The material you're going to use, the cloth, is just enough to control the blood that's coming out. Focus on the location, the exact location where you see the blood coming out. If it's just pooling, you're gonna have to absorb some of that pooling to see where what's filling that pool. So you're gonna need some addition. If you wonder why in first aid packs there's so much gauze, it's because everything you do requires that you absorb some kind of fluid. And so use some of that gauze, pat out the area so that you can see where the blood's coming. It'll take an instant where you'll see where it's filling right over here. You'll know in an instant that's exactly where you put the pressure, directly on that. It's going to hurt. So if somebody is awake and they're bleeding and you're pressing on the wound, it's going to hurt. You calmly reassure them that this is important and talk them through using whatever skills you have to help somebody be calm in that moment. Again, use just enough cloth or gauze to cover the injury so that you're just controlling the amount of fluid that's coming out, but you're allowing the full pressure of your hand to be conveyed through to the wound. If pressure stops the bleeding, keep it there. Don't let up, because it's essential. What's going on when the pressure stops the bleeding, your body is starting to coagulate and build structures within your circulatory system that are knitting together and forming a barrier so that the bleeding is controlled. If that only works so long as the place where it's doing that is the shape it's in. When you take the pressure off, it gets bigger. All these little structures that were doing so well suddenly are not doing well. So you've changed the game on them. So don't change the game. Once your body starts to repair itself or mitigate some of the danger, keep it the same by keeping the pressure on. Click to activate. Not gonna do that. So, packing. Not all bleeding comes from cuts and things. You can be punctured. Puncture wounds and deep cuts require more than just pressure. You have to fill the gap where the cut occurred or where the puncture has occurred. We do that with packing. This is the yucky part because you honestly, you're packing stuff into somebody's body. And so Susan, yeah. You're using sterile gauze, or you're using anything you have that's clean. Ideally sterile gauze. But when you do that, you can see in the little picture here, you're actually reaching in, you're pushing, you're lining the area, you are packing it, you're getting it so that the stuff you put in there is itself causing pressure. And that pressure is stopping the bleeding. What you don't do is just pack it over the top of it. You don't, this is not a paving kind of event. You're not paving over, you're actually filling the pothole with something that's going to stop the bleeding. Again, the same general areas of interest. Finally, the T word, tourniquet. For extremities, it's not recommended for the neck. The tourniquet, though, is life-saving. And one of the things that people used to talk about with tourniquets, you'd get this, there was an old idea of you'd have a tourniquet on for a while, and then somebody would expertly open the tourniquet slightly so that you still have circulation to the limb where the bleeding was. And that would keep the limb alive, and then, but you just let enough blood out that it gave some nutrition and some oxygenation, and then you tighten the tourniquet again. There are some problems with that. The biggest problem with that is that the blood, that old blood that you're pushing through, that you're replacing with oxygenated and nutritious blood, goes back to your heart. It turns out that the old blood can infect your heart. So you can actually do some real harm to somebody by taking a tourniquet off, having the blood that had been pooling on the outside or of the tourniquet area come back to the heart, because that's when your heart gets infected. So one of the things we don't do, once we put a tourniquet on something, we leave it. There are a couple things to know about tourniquets. You don't apply it right on the wound. So if my arm is bleeding out, I'm going to put my tourniquet here. I'm not going to put the tourniquet on the wound. I'll put it above or toward the heart on the wound. Don't put it on joints. It's not going to work. There's too many bones here. So if I put a tourniquet on my elbow because I've cut my hand off, it's not going to stop the bleeding. I have to go to the meaty part above or below the elbow. Tighten. Just keep tightening. It will work. There, you have whatever you have when you're dealing with a person, whether it's hard to say what other physiology varies, but tourniquets are going to vary by the person you put them on. Just keep tightening. It's going to eventually work. And like I said, do not remove that tourniquet. Just leave it there. These are examples of, you can buy tourniquets. I have a couple of these in my car. In fact, specifically of this one. But you can buy commercial tourniquets and have one in your car. You don't need to do that. The neat thing about all these, every one of these, you'll notice this little stick right here, stick there, stick there. Those are examples of how much pressure you need to put on the tourniquet, because these things have something built in that gives you leverage to crank down on it so that the bleeding stops. So that's, again, when we say just keep tightening until the bleeding stops, sometimes the tightening takes a lot of effort. Here's the brand names. And that's it for stopping bleeding. Using that, you can save someone's life. Now, with children, the same techniques work. The direct pressure works, the packing works, and the tourniquet. Oh, but the screen does not. Oh, there we go. Something that's very handy to know for small children and infants, in almost all cases, you're going to be effective with direct pressure because they don't have massive amounts of volume and volume of blood going through. So whatever direct pressure you put on there is likely going to be just fine when you're using an adult sized hand to do it. And for large wounds, it's packing as usual. Impaled objects. Do not remove an impaled object. It may be gross to see that some of the pipe sticking through someone's shoulder. Do not remove it because anything that pipe is blocking, any blood that's preventing from flowing, once you remove it, it's going to flow. And so it's pretty bizarre, but you will find ways to cut that pipe off and transport the person with the pipe to emergency services. They're going to show up with a pipe in it. That's how you keep people alive. Improvised tourniquets. Belts work great. So absolutely belts, cords, lamp cords, anything that you would imagine is good for an improvised tourniquet is in fact going to work. So don't feel like if you don't have one of those things you saw a picture of, you can't do the work. Take a belt, wrap it around, use that. Loss of an arm or leg, use the tourniquet. Absolutely, and find the limb if you can. Preserve it, somehow keep it clean. If you can throw it on ice, that's great. But for sure, you know to go above that area. Do not try and plug something. Don't get clever. If my hand goes, don't be working down here, trying to think you're just going to cap the area off. Instead, work up here in the meaty part, use the tourniquet, cut the tourniquet, and use the tourniquet. Pain, like we said, there's gonna be a lot of pain. So do what you can to help people stay calm. There's gonna be shock also. We'll talk about shock some other time, but we're not gonna do it now. And that's it for me. Yes.
All right. I think it's worth noting, just based off what you said, this is a nationwide campaign, and these kits are going to be attached to AEDs in big facilities and airports in the future. So if you do happen to be in the public environment of a big facility and or an airport, you will find these supplies. At some point, they're not stocked yet, but the plan nationwide is to have them.
Yes, stop the bleed's a big deal. So simple, yet so essential. All right.
Did you drink from your cup of blood?
This is my blood. Thank you all.
We have a few moments for questions for Chris.
Yeah, I do.
Oh.
What does CERT stand for?
Citizens Emergency Response Training. Great program. There is a ton of stuff. It's a lovely program.
And is the federal funding program?
Yes. It was, yeah, we'll see. Yeah, maybe not tomorrow. What's interesting is though, if we lose federal funding, I don't forget my training on how to teach it. And so the question about, well, maybe you won't get your hat or maybe you won't get your helmet. We can still make the slides, we can still have the classes. And so that's one of the great things about having all the trainers around here that we do is we can make sure that we have the knowledge to get through this stuff. Okay. So we will have the CERT training. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you all.
All right. Thank you for being patient. Have one more thing. Real quick, kind of follow up on the evacuation route and bolt cutters. We're trying to make sure all the leaders have bolt cutters. It does not hurt for you guys to have your own. We are leaders, but we may not be able to get to that gate before you do. So if you have a bolt cutter, you just stop there going out there. Right?
Just a moment. I have one. They're heavy.
They are heavy.
So plan to that.
You get lightweight ones too, but it just helps for everyone. So okay. Thank you everyone for being patient. We're gonna spend 10 minutes talking about homeowners insurance and hopefully I get you guys out by 11:55. So we all know we're a homeowner. Oh, so real quick. So I'm a financial advisor by profession. I talk about homeowners insurance with clients. I'm licensed to talk about homeowners insurance. So I barely know what I'm talking about, generally speaking. let's talk about why we're even in a crisis in the first place. I think everyone needs some context. So how it works with insurance is that when you have an insurance policy, every state has a state commissioner. So ours is Ricardo Lara, what his name is. And so what happens that when an insurance policy comes out for sale, it's been approved by the state in terms of how to price or what your premium is for that policy, okay? Whenever policy rates go up, the insurance commissioner has to approve those rate increases. Now, traditionally speaking, these are for-profit companies, right? So they should be making money, theoretically speaking. And so when they do a rate increase, their rate increases go up because they're trying to make sure they bring in enough money to cover all the claims from the state of California. We've had a lot of disasters in the last few years, mudslides, but rain, but really fires. And so I saw a stat the other day where for every dollar premium that comes into insurance companies, they're paying out $1.17 in claims. So they're losing money year after year after year. We just know that's not sustainable. So they go to the state commissioner and say, hey, we need to raise rates. The state commissioner is choosing to be on the side of consumers, which is a good thing, but to a point. And he's saying, I don't want the insurance companies to raise rates too much. Well, the insurance company is saying, sure, but we don't have enough revenue coming in to pay for these claims. So as an insurance company, they have a few choices. And so let's talk about what those choices are, right? One, they could say, hey, we want to mitigate losses. How do we make sure we don't write more checks than what comes in? They're going to make it really difficult for people to get insurance. They're going to say, hey, if you don't have a brand new house that has all the fireproofing, we want to insure you. Or if you don't live in a certain area that is typically more urban and not where we live, we'll insure you. But if you live up against a fire line like we do, we're not going to insure you, right? They're going to make sure that you have all the updated, roof, plumbing, electrical, maintenance history. They're trying to make sure that they don't have to pay out a claim. Think about it this way. An insurance company does not have to take you as a client. Imagine that they have a roster and they've got 100 spaces. You have to compete for one of the spaces. Why would an insurance company take you, who might be able to hire risk because you don't keep up with your house, versus someone who's going to pay? I've got a brand new house and everything's up to code. They're going to take the one that is less risk to them, right? But you have to compete for that spot. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Two, they just won't offer policies at all, right? So you've heard State Farm, Farmers. A lot of companies have left the state. They've literally said, we are not going to do business here anymore. And so that's how they mitigate risk. They're going to essentially boycott. They're going to walk with their feet. Okay.
State Farm is not writing your policy for them, like the state of California.
Yes, but they are canceling people's policies. So slowly they're going away, right? They're the biggest insurer in California. So if I'm going to say, hey, we're going to cancel everybody, it's not likely because it's kind of a bad PR move. They're going to do it slowly and quiet. They will also limit your coverage. I'm sure some of you have a California Fair Plan policy. It's a fire policy. So what happens is the insurance company will say, hey, we'll insure you, but we're only going to insure part of your policy. So if it's not fire related, earthquake or flood related, we'll insure that. But if your house catches on fire, you have to have a separate fire policy. That's how they mitigate risk. The chances are you're not going to file a claim for anything else other than fire nowadays. So they'll say, great, you'll get what's called a DIC policy, a difference of conditions policy, and insures everything else other than earthquake, fire, or flood. You have to get separate policies for those three other issues. Okay. And then lastly, they will scrutinize the heck out of your claim, right? So if your house burns down, they'll be like, well, really, how much stuff did you have there? So just like Nick was saying, videotape everything, prove to them that you got all your stuff, right? You may have heard, and this is on the automobile side, this was 3 years ago, a guy got in a car accident. It was his fault. He went to go file an insurance claim, and the insurance company said, because you did not disclose the fact that you had teenagers in the house, even though they're not licensed, they're like 13, 14 years old, can't drive, because you didn't disclose it, we will deny your claim. They took that to the insurance commissioner, the insurance commissioner sided on the side of the insurance company. So you've got to be super like diligent about disclosing everything. The policy will be very clear about what you need to disclose. Better disclose it than not and have to deal with, I need to file $1 million claim to replace my house, and oh, they're not going to cover it, and you're out of line. So talk with your agent about it. They should be very clear about what is needed. Right now, it's around the idea of like, just make sure you disclose all the residents of your house. It never hurts to do that. Okay. So what can you do, right? Your policy is precious. Do not do anything to jeopardize it. And so if they request you do something, do it. It's a pain. Yes, it might cost you a little bit of money. Yes, do it, because the alternative is you don't have insurance, or you got to go buy a policy that is 4 times more expensive. So for example, right now, if you just get like a regular policy we would have had 3 years ago where it covered everything, which is, so in California, everything is, every issue with the exception of earthquake and flood. Flood and earthquake are always a separate policy. But generally speaking, a policy will cover everything but those things. If you have to go get a DIC policy plus a CFP policy, it will cost you about 4 times more. So a $2,000 policy will cost you roughly up to about $6,000. Okay, so just spend the extra money and do what they ask you to do. Think twice before filing a claim. Your claim history matters. It didn't matter as much a few years ago. It really matters now. And so, in my opinion, if the claim's under about $10,000, much as it sucks, just do it. Because you don't want to have to pay a higher premium later on. If it's above $10,000, generally speaking, it's probably worth it. But if you can afford to not to pay for that claim out of pocket, it's worth just paying for it. The house burns down, file the claim. I get that. But something small, they'll say, great, we'll give you kind of one chance, and beyond that, it's on your history, and they will likely cancel you. You got to be really conscientious of like how many times you want to raise your hand. Okay. If you receive mail from the insurance company, open the mail right away. I've had clients where their policy has lapsed, and it took up to a month to get it reinstated. And nowadays, that month could matter. So be very aware of your mail that comes in. Like I said earlier, disclose everything on your, disclose everything you need to disclose for the policy. Lastly, expect rates to go up. We're gonna see insurance companies try to play catch up for the last 10 years, but they haven't been making money. And they're cutting deals with the state commissioner to raise rates. If you get a 30% increase, that is not, unfortunately, it sounds unreasonable. It is not unreasonable in today's day and age.
That's low.
That's low, right?
Mine's tripled in the last 2 years.
It's crazy, right? So just be aware that these rate increases, it's nothing personal. You didn't do anything bad. You didn't, it's just, that's the nature of the business right now. And we're actually not seeing it just in California. We're seeing it nationwide. You think about the natural disasters that happen in Texas and Florida. These insurance companies, right? It's like they got one big bucket. So they're going to try to find ways to pull money from everywhere. And the more claims they pay out, whether it's California or Florida or wherever else, they're trying to make up for those losses. So it's not just here, it's not just us, but it's mostly us. And then kind of like what Nick was saying earlier, right? We're seeing so much widespread damage that, and right out like in LA, right? I mean, it's so widespread. The cost of materials, the cost of contract labor is only going to go up. And you want to make sure not only now that you're just doing improvements now, be aware of that, but now the cost to reconstruct your property. Because when you buy an insurance policy, you're buying what's called dwelling coverage. It is the cost of replacement. It's not the cost, it's not how much your property is worth, it's what it costs to rebuild your structure. That cost will go up 20% because everyone needs materials now, right? So if your house burned down today, you've got to compete with the guys in LA to get your plywood up here, you get your labor up here, okay? One little neat fact that most people don't know about is in your policy, you have what's called extended replacement cost. What that means is, let's say you're insured for $1 million. Typically speaking, it's built into the policy of 25 to 50%. In the event that your house burns down and it costs more than $1 million, they build in some extra buffer to help cover any additional costs up to 25% more or 50% more. Yeah, look at your policy, it'll tell you how much buffer you have. So they build it into some degree, but you want to make sure your policy keeps coming up to what is essentially your replacement cost. Your agent can use what's called a replacement cost estimator. It's literally a calculator that says, based on your square footage and based off of what it costs to replace house per square foot, between $200 to $250 per square foot. They do the math and say, here's what it should cost to rebuild your house. All right, that's all I got for insurance. We're almost at time. You got 5 minutes for questions.
Actually, I wanted to add something.
Yes.
Yes, and has anybody here heard of scheduling when it comes to insurance?
Yeah.
Okay, this is something that is related to what Nick was talking about when he was talking about going through your house in the video and you see everything that's in your house. All of that needs to be divulged to the insurance company, and that's what scheduling is about. I encourage you all, well, what happens over time is we get better and better stuff, we get nice stuff. We get things that were not in the house when we wrote our insurance policy. So when your house then burns and you claim that you had 3 Rolexes, they're like, where's your proof? Well, I don't have the, and we didn't know they were in there. We would have charged you a higher insurance rate if we had known we were insuring a hutch full of Rolexes. So they won't. You're gonna get 3 timers worth of money. So the way you get around that is, if you're old enough to remember what Timex is. The way you get around that is you go through your house, you look for all the valuable and unique items, you divulge them to your insurance company. They may kick your rate up slightly because the replacement cost is higher, but it saves a lot of disappointments. They will win the argument if you don't have receipts and so on. So schedule, get it on the schedule, and then it'll get replaced.
So what they do is they say, hey, there's a maximum amount that we can that you can get for this particular item. For example, they'll put $10,000 worth of jewelry, $5,000 worth of cash. If you have 50 grand of cash that just burns up, they're going to give you $5,000 for it. If you tell the insurance company, hey, I keep more cash, I keep more jewelry, yeah, you pay extra premium, but then they'll say, great, we'll give you a bigger limit. So you just want to be aware of kind of what you have versus limits. If you don't care about the Rolexes, then so be it. But there are certain limits because they just know if they say, hey, we give you an unlimited amount of limit for jewelry. When your house burns up, everyone will be like, I got $1 million of jewelry, you know? So you gotta just be aware of that. Any questions from my snoozing insurance speech? I'm glad to put you all to sleep. So real quick, just as a reminder, again, let's see here. What's my clicker? Thank you so much for coming. We welcome your contribution. Again, this only works because we could have the funds to literally pay for coffee, to pay for services. As PEIA continues to build up and do more things, we literally need the dollars to be able to pay for some of these services. So your donation really, really helps. $5 would be great. $10 even better. Whatever you want to give, your retirement fund, we'll welcome it. But you could do it by Venmo. Cash is always easiest. We have Zelle, we have PayPal, whatever works for you guys. Thank you so much. We got Charles in the back. Babette, go for it.
Just a very, very quick. All of us want to be compliant with zone 1. Might be a recommendation going forward that we collectively maybe can negotiate with whether it's contractors, whatever that's needed. Also, if we have a picture of like a model house.
Oh, that'd be really cool.
You know, just as an idea, so we know what, you know, in our neighborhood, what compliant is. Just like, I'm pretty compliant.
I love that idea. Yeah.
Just throwing it out.
Let's talk more about that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you at the next event.